here it is right here, my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K. What's up guys, it's Mitch here. If you guys follow me over on Instagram and tune into my stories every day, you'll know that I recently got the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K, and boy am I excited about this camera. I'm going to be bringing you guys my overall thoughts on this camera really soon after I get a chance to use it for at least a couple of weeks. Now I've only had the camera for 2 weeks, so I want to give it at least a month before I share my thoughts on the camera with you guys. But today I'm going to do what I don't think many other people are doing on YouTube, which is just showing the ISO performance of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K camera. One advantage that the Blackmagic 6K has over the 4K is its larger sensor size. So it has an APS-C sensor versus the Micro Four Thirds sensor in the Blackmagic 4K. And if you've been around cameras enough, you'll probably know that the larger the sensor, generally the better it's going to do in low light. Now, the 6K also has a dual native ISO sensor, which means that basically it has two native ISO settings, which is like where the camera performs best in terms of ISO. The lower base is 400, the higher base is 3200. Now, with the introduction of the Blackmagic 4K and 6K cinema cameras at such an affordable price, there are a lot of people that are going to be jumping into a RAW workflow for the first time in their lives. And so there are a few things to note before you actually get started. Myself, I've been working with the RED cameras for quite a while now, so I'm pretty used to this sort of stuff. One awesome thing that the Blackmagic RAW format allows you to do is actually change your ISO in post. So if you decide that, the shot is too bright or too dark, then you can adjust the ISO, and this is a really cool tool because you don't always get your exposure absolutely perfect on set, and with a compressed codec like H.264 or ProRes, you're really going to be adding extra noise and grain when you're moving your exposure values around in post, whereas with the Blackmagic this is far less of an option when you can just simply change your ISO later on. So one thing that I think is really important, and actually no one's talking about this online at all, is the fact that when you shoot at the base ISO of 400, you get a range of ISOs that you can choose in post, and that ranges from ISO 100 to 1250. You can't go any higher or any lower than those values. So if you're in between those values when you're shooting in the camera, let's say you're at ISO 1250, and you decide that in post you want to go above 1250, you actually can't. You need to move up to the lower ISO base of 3200, and the range that you can choose with the higher base is from 1600 all the way up to 6400. So that's something really important that you need to keep in mind when you're shooting with these Blackmagic cinema cameras in the RAW format. The other thing as well is that once you go above ISO 6400, so I'm talking about ISO 8000, 10,000, all the way up to 25,600, I would probably avoid these ISOs if you can, but in case you're going above 6400, you cannot change the ISO in post, which is really interesting. And I was kind of surprised by that. I thought that you would be able to change that ISO, but once you go above 6400, you're stuck with that one particular ISO that you shot in the camera. So let's get on to these tests that I did. For the first one, I shot a highway from the highway overpass, and I started at ISO 1250, so the lower range of the upper ISO, because this is like an ISO test. You want to see low light situations, and so I went all the way up to 25,600. For the second test, I started at ISO 400, and this was done in like a pretty dimly lit pool hall. And then again, I went all the way up to 25,600. Now I did add in as well a little bit of a montage of footage shot at 3200 ISO, so the higher base ISO. And I also did a little test of the denoising in DaVinci Resolve Studio. So as you guys probably know or are aware, but if you're not aware, with the Blackmagic 6K and 4K, in fact, you do get a full version of DaVinci Resolve, which is called DaVinci Resolve Studio, and it has a bunch of extra features over the free version. But one of the most important ones to me, and obviously with this test, one of the ones that we can really test out, is the noise reduction tool that's built into the program. So I chose to use ISO 12800 to do the noise reduction test because it's sort of like the next stop up from 6400. I think that the camera is very clean up until ISO 6400, so I thought it was a good ISO to test it out, and I was pleasantly surprised by the results, but I'll let you guys be the judge. So I hope you guys enjoy this test. It's just going to be running through a bunch of footage at different ISOs, and I'm going to come back at the end and share my final thoughts. So as I said, I think that the Blackmagic 6K is definitely usable up to ISO 6400. and even above if you want to get into doing some mild denoising. Obviously I wouldn't go too crazy. I think anything above 12,800 with denoiser, you're sort of getting into the realm of losing sharpness and losing dynamic range, so I'd want to avoid that when shooting on this camera. But you know, I think that if you do need to go up to ISO 6400, it's really nice to know that you can in a situation that you need to. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of the footage, what you think the ISO performance is like. I don't have a Blackmagic 4K, so I can't compare it to that, but if you do own one, please let me know if you see any improvement over that camera. Now, I am going to be shooting a short film next week, and I'm actually going to do a full behind the scenes. So I'm going to bring you guys onto the set to show you guys how I rig up the camera, and then also what it's like using it in a real world situation. So make sure you guys subscribe and stick around for that. And with that being said, that pretty much wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you leave a thumbs up. And that's it from me. I'll catch you guys in the next one.